Enlarge a customized Waymo minivan being shown off at the 2017 North American International Auto Show in Detroit. This story has everything: a cutthroat startup using cloak and dagger tactics going up against a corporate giant, a now dismissed star engineer accused of stealing thousands of crucial files, cutting-edge Silicon Valley technology, and a whip-smart, nonsense, tech-savvy judge. This year's hottest tech-related trial is Waymo v. Uber. At 7:30 MPT Monday, what began as a trade secrets lawsuit back in February 2017 is set to open in federal court in San Francisco, just blocks from Uber headquarters. On one side is Waymo, the self-driving car division of Alphabet, Google's parent company. Its lawyers accused Uber of effectively stealing its secret sauce when the ride-sharing company hired away a top engineer who had taken 14,000 internal files without authorization before leaving Google. On the other side is Uber, which maintains that it did nothing wrong when it hired Anthony Levandowski in August 2016 and paid an eye-popping $680 million for his startup, Otto, which had only existed for a few months. Uber maintains that it hasn't improperly benefited from what Levandowski took. In fact, since this case began, Uber even fired Levandowski because he would not comply with subpoenas. What precise trade secrets Uber is accused of taking remains publicly unknown. For Waymo, showing that what Uber acquired was indeed a trade secret and that it was misappropriated isn't slam dunk. After all, while trade secrets are, as the moniker suggests, secret, they aren't as legally protected as patents. Waymo will need to prove that Levandowski stole its information, that Uber knew it, and that Uber incorporated the information into its self-driving car technology, Russell Beck, a veteran trade secrets lawyer, told us. He also noted that usually such lawsuits settle rather than go to trial. Uber will need to show that, even if there was some wrongful conduct, it is not using Waymo's technology and, therefore, no harm, no foul. Still, if Waymo can prove that Uber is liable and improperly used its trade secrets, Uber could be on the hook for billions of dollars, potentially a sizable blow to a company that has already lost billions as it aggressively expands globally. If Uber loses at trial and also loses on appeal, it may pose existential problems for a company that is already being heavily scrutinized. High-stakes gamble separately, Uber continues to be under the microscope for its questionable internal practices. So far, the company has been criticized for tolerating sexual harassment and thwarting regulators, and inquiries have been made into Uber about potential criminal behavior. Its previous CEO Travis Kalanick also had a penchant for secrecy and power during his tenure. In 2016, Kalanick characterized Uber's attempt to at least stay atop the autonomous vehicle space as critical to the company's future. If we are not tied for first, then the person who is in first, or the entity that's in first, then rolls out a ride-sharing network that is far cheaper or far higher quality than Uber's, then Uber is no longer a thing, he told Business Insider. In a July 2017 deposition, Kalanick also said in order for Uber to exist in the future, we will likely need to be a leader in the autonomous vehicle space. In short, Uber has more to lose. Enlarge then, so Travis Kalanick gestures as he speaks at an event in New Delhi on December 16, 2016. However, if Uber can stave off the lawsuit and win on appeal, then its billion-dollar bet last year on self-driving cars will likely let it stay in the game. After all, Uber currently has what Waymo doesn't have: a vast ride-sharing network and the software and engineers to go with it. Waymo may be ahead in AV hardware and software, but Uber is dominant in rideshare software. Uber will need to attack the validity of the trade secret status of the information, but, most importantly, show that Uber had no knowledge of what Levandowski was doing and that Uber did not acquire or use the information, Elizabeth Rowe emailed us. She is a professor at the University of Florida and expert in trade secrets law. As a matter of strategy, she added, Uber may try to distance itself from him as much as possible. Whoever wins this case, it's clear that a dominant autonomous ride-share company will emerge in the coming years. It may be Waymo, Uber, or yet another company, like GM. While Waymo and Uber duke it out in court, traditional players like GM, with their manufacturing and marketing muscle, could end up as the winners. Raj Kumar, the co-director of the General Motors Carnegie Mellon Vehicular Information Technology Collaborative Research Lab, emailed us. Waymo and Uber, for all their technological prowess, lack the underlying platform, and all their alliances with car makers seem to have been pretty weak and toothless. They could have been just window dressing for car makers to know what Waymo and Uber are capable of in the AV space. Origin story: the modern era of autonomous driving really began in 2004, during the DARPA Grand Challenge. This was a Department of Defense-funded competition with a cash prize of $1 million for the first team to build a vehicle that could travel 150 miles autonomously in the desert of southeastern California. None of the teams finished the challenge that year. The team that finished the farthest, Red Team from Carnegie Mellon University, barely exceeded 7 miles of the course. One top member of the squad was Sebastian Thrun, then a CMU professor. One of Thrun's competitors was Lewandowski, then 24 years old, who had recently gotten his master's degree in industrial engineering from UC Berkeley. The young engineer had an entirely different strategy at the Grand Challenge. Rather than try to outfit a traditional four-wheeled car, why not do it on a motorcycle, which would be nimbler and cheaper? His team's creation, Ghost Rider, was born. The motorcycle's name may have come from a phenomenon born in nearby Oakland called ghost riding, in which people would dance on and near a car rolling slowly with no one behind the wheel. The term was immortalized in the 2006 Mr. FAB song Ghost Ride It. In large, Anthony Lewandowski, far left, seen here preparing for the DARPA Grand Challenge in 2004. The following year, 2005, Thrun was at Stanford University, where he and his team built up Stanley, a Volkswagen SUV. Both Stanley and the Ghost Rider competed against one another, and Stanley ended up winning. It completed the 132-mile-long desert course in just under 7 hours. Thrun and his team collected the prize, which had been doubled to $2 million. Among the attendees of the 2005 DARPA Grand Challenge were Google co-founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page, who turned up to the event in hats and sunglasses, lest they be recognized. Larry has been a believer in this technology for much longer than I even knew, Thrun told CNBC in 2017. And so was Sergey. And they really want to understand what's going on. In the wake of the 2005 event, while still at Stanford, Thrun began pursuing research into autonomous vehicles with even more vigor. Likely in 2006, he began work on Vootool, an imaging startup that used technology from the research on Stanley. One of Thrun's colleagues at Vootool was Lewandowski. The entire startup was reportedly acquired by Google around March 2007. Vootool became critical in the early efforts of Google Street View. According to the Wall Street Journal, Vootool's tech was not only cheaper, but superior to what Google had made in-house. However, even after Vootool was acquired and Lewandowski became a Google employee, he went ahead and founded a new company, 510 Systems, on May 11, 2007. 510 refers to the area code for Berkeley and the surrounding region. DARPA held no event in 2006, but in November 2007, it decided to up to the ante once more. This time, rather than having the teams compete in a rural area, it would invite teams for an urban challenge held on an old Air Force base in Victorville, California, 100 miles east of Los Angeles. That base, with its streets and buildings, would simulate a small town. Teams had to complete a 60-mile course, navigate intersections, and obey all California traffic laws. There, Thrun and his Stanford colleagues entered a converted Volkswagen Passat named Junior. In the end, they took second place and a $1 million prize. Page 2. In 2006 and 2007, 510 Systems' main product was a specialized computer called a timing box. It used very accurate timing devices for mapping and was put on Street View vehicles. The timing box was the linchpin of that era of Street View technology and kept track of precisely when and where the lasers and lidar fired. In large, Sebastian Thrun, in 2005, was the director of the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Lab and associate professor of computer science at Stanford University. Amazingly, 510 Systems, which Lewandowski founded, sold its tech via a middleman to Google, where Lewandowski also worked. Early in 2008, the Discovery Channel contacted Lewandowski and challenged him to build a self-driving car that could dare pizza for their new show Prototype This. He immediately agreed. In June 2008, Lewandowski formed yet another company, Antony's Robots, which modified a Toyota Prius Probot to do just that. That car eventually became the prototype for Google's own self-driving operations. IEEE Spectrum reported in 2009 that Google had given Thrun and Lewandowski a blank check to develop the technology. What's still baffling, however, is how Lewandowski was working for Google while also making a company that was, at best, selling to Google and, at worst, competing with it. The real mystery that many of us ponder is why Google let this happen. Ben Disco, a former engineer at 510 Systems, told us. It doesn't seem sound. The rumor was he was a 50% time employee and 50% at 510. The New York Times broke the story of Google's self-driving project in October 2010. Months went by. About halfway through Disco's tenure, in the spring of 2011, 510 Systems was at a crossroads: should it compete with Google, or be acquired? Lewandowski asked the employees to email him privately with their votes. In the end, the result was to let 510 be bought for just shy of $20 million, a demarcation line above which employees would have received equity payouts. Enlarge the Google self-driving car maneuvers through the streets of in Washington, D.C., on May 14, 2012. In retrospect, Disco said that this seems like a rather devious move. By all publicly available information, it seems that he screwed 510 Systems equity shareholders over, he added. That's pretty undeniable here. Disco noted that he wasn't in line for any equity, but many of his colleagues were. He said that he didn't work much with Lewandowski directly. I got the impression that help's super smart, super ambitious, pretty much cared only about making cool robotics things, Disco added. Lewandowski would get bored if you talked about anything else. In early 2011, 510 Systems quietly joined Google under the Google X wing of the company, which produced moonshot projects. It also produced an advanced LiDAR, one of the crucial pieces of technology in the Waymo v. Uber lawsuit. Lewandowski continued to work at Google for years on self-driving cars. In a 2013 interview with The New Yorker, Lewandowski boasted, "I only do cool shit." In his final year, Lewandowski earned $120 million in an annual bonus before abruptly leaving the company in January 2016. Uber hired an outside firm to conduct a due diligence report in August 2016. The firm turned up how, in March 2016, Lewandowski had 5 optical discs full of data head downloaded from Waymo. Soon after, he took them to an Oakland facility to be shredded. In addition to being the inciting person in Waymo v. Uber, Lewandowski was reportedly hit by 2 arbitration claims brought against him by Alphabet. The claims remain ongoing. Witnesses abound. More so than anyone else, Waymo likely wants Lewandowski to take the stand and explain his predicament. An October 2017 court filing details a long list of questions that Waymo lawyers would like to put to Lewandowski, but if his past behavior is any indication, he is unlikely to explain anything. For now, Lewandowski has fought tooth and nail to say essentially nothing. He has repeatedly invoked the Fifth Amendment and risked losing his job rather than come clean. In late May 2017, Uber fired Lewandowski. According to Kalanick's deposition, Lewandowski downloaded the files as essentially an insurance policy to protect a $120 million bonus. But Kalanick was blunt with his analysis of his then employee's behavior: "That's pretty fucking dumb." Both sides have named the dozens of people that they wish to call to the witness stand. At U.S. District Judge William Alsup's insistence, both sides have submitted a list of the first 7 witnesses that they intend to call. Lewandowski appears on neither list of the initial 7, but he does appear on the master list of potential witnesses. Other names include Larry Page and Sergey Brin, among other top Waymo and Uber executives. Waymo, as the plaintiff, will have the chance to present its witnesses first, and Uber's attorneys will have the opportunity to cross-examine them. When Waymo is done with presenting its case, Uber will have its turn and the roles will be reversed. Enlarge Waymo CEO John Krafcik describes the company's project as a new way forward for self-driving cars during the second day of Web Summit in Altice Arena on November 7, 2017 in Lisbon, Portugal. On Monday, Waymo's first witness will be its CEO John Krafcik. He is expected to discuss Waymo's business and his relationship with Lewandowski. Next up will be Dmitry Dolgov, a Waymo vice president of engineering, who has been described as a member of Waymo's old guard. Dolgov was also a teammate of Thrun's during the 2007 DARPA Urban Challenge. Next will be Gary Brown, a veteran Google security engineer who detected Lewandowski's questionable download before his resignation from the company. In a March 2017 declaration, Brown said that Lewandowski downloaded 9.7 gigabytes worth of Waymo's proprietary data in December 2015. Fourth on Waymo's list is William Grossman, a Waymo employee who accidentally received an email from a contractor, Guerrilla Circuits, that included schematics for a Waymo printed circuit board that had been labeled as being from Otto, Lewandowski's new company. That suggested something was amiss with Otto and its new parent company, Uber. Following Grossman is John Bears, now the CEO of Carnegie Robotics in Pittsburgh. He worked for Uber's AV group for nearly 3 years, until October 2017. He is expected to discuss, via his earlier deposition, Uber's lack of independent development. After Bears, Waymo intends to call Kalanick, likely around Wednesday or Thursday of the trial. Rounding out the 7 is Brian McClendon, who will also testify via deposition. He worked for 2 years as Uber's vice president for Maps and Business Platform, until he stepped down last year to enter Kansas state politics. Likely during the second week of trial, Uber will call its first witness, Kalanick. Next up will be Eric Friedberg, the co-president of Stroz Friedberg, the company that filed the famous due diligence report for Uber in the run-up to the acquisition of Otto. After Stroz Friedberg is Sasha Zbrojek, who administered the Waymo server that Lewandowski took the files from and called them low value in an email that was read in court on September 27, 2017. Fourth will be Krafzik again, followed by Thruns, and then Scott Boemker, Uber's own in-house LiDAR expert. The seventh will be James Haslam, another LiDAR expert. Straight and narrow so far, the most explosive part of Waymo v. Uber has been the mid-December 2017 release of the so-called Jacobs letter. It outlines in detail the questionable and possibly illegal behavior that former Uber security official Richard Jacobs and his former colleagues engaged in during his 11-month tenure at the company. This letter ultimately led federal prosecutors to open a criminal investigation into Uber, which is still ongoing. The May 5, 2017 Jacobs letter was sent to Uber's top lawyers by a Minnesota attorney on Jacobs' behalf, and it was essentially a warning that Jacobs may sue the company. Rather than go to court over his claims, Uber ended up paying $4.5 million to Jacobs and $3 million to his lawyer, Clayton Halunen. Judge Alsup has expressed astonishment that Halunen received so much for doing so little. Halunen has not responded to our repeated requests for comment. But while the Jacobs letter and its revelations are salacious, Judge Alsup said recently in his own pre-trial order that the case must stay on the issue of the alleged trade secrets misappropriation. He has largely forbidden attorneys from bringing it up at trial. They are allowed to raise the issue insofar as it relates to Jacobs' direct testimony when he takes the stand later on. The trial will be trial on Waymo's claims of trade secret misappropriation, not a trial on Uber's litigation practices or corporate culture, Judge Alsup wrote on January 30. Of course, evidence of Uber's litigation misconduct or other bad behavior may be relevant and admissible insofar as it reasonably bears on actual claims and defenses in this case. For example, facts like Uber's use of ephemeral messaging may be used to explain gaps in Waymo's proof that Uber misappropriated trade secrets or to supply proof that is part of the res gestae of the case, like the due diligence report. Such evidence will not be permitted, however, to the extent that it becomes cumulative, invites improper speculation, vilifies Uber without proving much else, or threatens to overwhelm the trial and distract from the merits of the case. Alsup went on to say that both sides have engaged in half-truths and other slick litigation conduct, and that Waymo, which has whined, often without good reason, at every turn in this case, essentially needs to put up or shut up. To repeat, the central issue in this case remains whether or not Uber misappropriated Waymo's trade secrets, not whether or not Uber is an evil corporation, the judge continued. Waymo's decision to devote so much time and effort to pursuing matters with so little connection to the merits raises the troubling possibility that Waymo is unwilling or unable to prove up a solid case on the merits and instead seeks to inflame the jury against Uber with a litany of supposed bad acts. A judge who codes in both his writing and in his management of his courtroom, Judge Alsup himself has been a formidable presence during the case. The 72-year-old son of Jackson, Mississippi, who speaks with a southern accent not often heard in the Bay Area, has been on the federal bench for nearly 20 years. He takes no guff from anyone. Alsup famously oversaw both Oracle v. Google trials and taught himself Java in the process. He's not afraid to wrap his brain around the technology at hand. In a recent interview with MLEX, a legal news website, he reminisced about how, as a child, he first explored consumer technology through shortwave radio and listened to Radio Free Europe and Radio Moscow in the early 1950s. "This just thrilled us," Alsup told the website. "The idea we'd ever go to Europe or South America was beyond our comprehension. We were just two little barefoot kids in Mississippi." He continues to enjoy ham radio. His call sign is N6XMW. A Bay Area ham radio website credits Alsup with coming up with a wilderness protocol for effective simplex use of handheld VHF and FM transceivers in the backcountry way back in 1994. Alsup spends a great deal of his leisure time in the Sierra Nevada and Lake Tahoe region of Eastern California, a few hours east of San Francisco. As he grew older, he became something of an amateur programmer. A 2017 profile of Judge Alsup in The Verge says he can definitely code. He's been coding in BASIC for decades, actually, writing programs for the fun of it, a program to play bridge, written as a gift for his wife, an automatic solution for the board game Mastermind, which he is immensely fond of, and, most ambitiously, a sprawling, multifunctional program with a graphical interface that helps him with yet another of his many hobbies, ham radio, The Verge reported. That's not all. As an amateur photographer, his work is displayed in other Northern California courthouses. Alsup is familiar with the principles of optics. That interest has served him well. About a month into the Waymo v. Uber case, in March 2017, Judge Alsup made an unusual request of both sides' lawyers. He asked for homework for himself. The judge requests each side to name one and only one book, treatise, article, or other reference publicly available that will inform him about LiDAR and particularly its application to self-driving vehicles, he wrote. Please keep in mind that the judge is already familiar with basic light and optics principles involving lens, such as focal lengths, the nonlinear nature of focal points as a function of distance of an object from the lens, where objects get focused to on a screen behind a lens, and the use of a lens to project as well as to focus. So, most useful would be literature on adapting LiDAR to self-driving vehicles, including various strategies for positioning light-emitting diodes behind the lens for best overall effect, as well as use of a single lens to project outgoing light as well as to focus incoming reflections other than, of course, the patents in suit. The judge wishes to learn the prior art and public domain art bearing on the patents in suit and trade secrets in suit. Presuming no settlements or further delays, Judge Alsup anticipates that the trial for Waymo v. Uber will wrap up in about 3 weeks.